I examined the 10 most influential empires of the past 500 years and the last 3 global reserve currencies. This exploration traced the rise and fall of the Dutch Empire and the guilder, the British Empire and the pound, the ascent and early decline of the American Empire and the dollar, and the decline and resurgence of the Chinese Empire and its currencies. It also covered the rise and fall of the Spanish, German, French, Indian, Japanese, Russian, and Ottoman empires, along with their major conflicts, illustrated in this chart. To gain deeper insight into China's historical patterns, I also examined the rise and fall of Chinese dynasties and their currencies dating back to the year 600. Since analyzing all these metrics at once can be overwhelming, I'll focus on the 4 most significant cases: the Dutch, British, American, and Chinese empires. A clear pattern emerges. Each followed overlapping cycles lasting roughly 250 years, with transitional phases of about 10 to 20 years in between. These transitions were often marked by intense conflict, as dominant powers rarely give up their position without a struggle. So how do I measure an empire's power in this study? I use 8 key metrics. Each nation's overall power is calculated by averaging its performance across these measures: the quality of education, levels of innovation and technological development, competitiveness in global markets, economic output, share of world trade, military strength, the influence of its financial center in global capital markets, and the strength of its currency as a reserve currency. Because these factors are quantifiable, we can clearly see how powerful each country is today, how powerful it was in the past, and where it may be heading next. By examining the patterns across many nations, we can observe how a typical empire cycle unfolds. Since the fluctuations can sometimes seem confusing, we can simplify them to highlight the core cause and effect relationships that drive an empire's rise and decline. Generally, improved education leads to greater innovation and technological advancement, which, after some delay, helps establish a nation's currency as a global reserve. Eventually, these same forces begin to weaken, usually in the same order, reinforcing the overall cycle of ascent and decline. Let's now examine the typical sequence of events within a country that drives these rises and declines. In essence, a major cycle often begins after a significant conflict, usually a war, that establishes a new dominant power and a new world order. Since no one initially dares to challenge this new leadership, a period of peace and prosperity follows. Over time, as people grow accustomed to stability and success, they begin to assume it will last indefinitely. This growing confidence leads them to borrow and spend more, which eventually sets the stage for a financial crisis. As the empire's share of global trade expands, its currency becomes increasingly dominant. Once most international transactions are conducted in that currency, it attains the status of a global reserve currency, further amplifying the empire's prosperity. However, this wealth is rarely distributed evenly. Over time, the gap between the rich and the poor widens, creating social tension. Eventually, the financial bubble bursts, prompting the printing of more money and intensifying internal conflict between the wealthy and the struggling. This growing unrest often leads to some form of revolution or redistribution of wealth, whether through peaceful reform or violent upheaval. Sometimes these internal struggles escalate into a civil war. As the empire becomes consumed by conflict within, its power weakens compared to rising external rivals. Eventually, one of these emerging powers grows strong enough to challenge the dominant but unstable empire, leading to major external confrontations, often wars. Out of these internal and external battles, emerge new winners and losers. The victors then come together to establish a new world order, and the cycle begins once again.